Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm talking with fellow entrepreneur Cam Sloan, where we're talking about the mindset about going all in as a solo founder. He's currently building his own tech product called Hopscotch. And we'll be diving in and exploring what that is like, the mindset around it, and how he's achieved it, and any kind of tips that he's got along the way. So, Cam, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Martin. I'm doing well. Just getting the day started and yeah, looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time that you've got for us today. And so yeah, we reached out on Twitter. You put an ask me anything out there, and I went through what you were saying, and you gave a few kind of topics, the kind of things that are good to ask you. And one that struck out to me was uh, going sort of all in on your own startup. And the reason why that resonated with me, because I'm currently contracting full time and I'm building my own project that I want to take somewhere. And I thought this is a great opportunity to get some expert advice from people who are there before me. And I think that's really, really good. And you said, hey, if you want to talk about this in further in a public setting, I thought this is a great opportunity to get you on the show and dive into it. So yeah, so tell us about your project Hopscotch, so to give everybody a perspective on what you're working on and what it is.
Yeah, for sure. So Hopscotch is I'm building a SaaS company, and it's really to help other SaaS companies with user onboarding. You can add product tours into your application to kind of help show your users how to use your application. And so it may come in the form of like showing how to use specific features, or may just be like a nice welcome message. And then kind of it has some targeting functionality so that you can specifically reach your different segments that you may be targeting. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on for the past 6 months, even a bit more, but really kind of heavily the past 6 months. And yeah, it's been going well. It's one of those like slowly but surely we're getting there. But I really enjoy working on it. The problem space is super interesting, and I've met great people along the way doing this, customers and just other people who are working in the space. So yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Brilliant. No, that's really good. I checked out your product, looked at the video tour and the demo. It looks really cool. So I can certainly see, because what the app I'm building, I have done zero onboarding at the moment. I don't even have a homepage. So I appreciate there's going to be a phase where I get to where I'm going to need to actually help users transition onto that. So I guess the first question I have got at the moment is what drew you to that idea as a project? How did you get into that?
Yeah, so I can't like lie and say that I was super passionate about user onboarding before, going into this. It kind of was a bit of a fluke, and so I was originally supposed to have a co-founder on this. And so the way that we came to that idea was he was actually so going to the freelancing part of my journey, he was trying to hire me to do some freelance work for him. And so, and it didn't really work out, but we ended up getting along super well. And so we wanted to find just, I don't know, we ended up hanging out, chatting, and we wanted to work on something like a project together. So we were kind of going through like every wannabe entrepreneur has like their list of ideas, right? And so this kind of actually happened to be on both of our lists, just because like for me it was on my list previously because it just looked like a well-defined problem space, possible to do as like a solo or small team entrepreneur, then um and like a variety of other reasons. And then for him, he had kind of experienced this problem directly. So I would say he's more the catalyst of like oh, why is this so hard to do? And why are the options out there just so prohibitively expensive? They like when you look at the competition, they are, yeah, just very enterprise focused, or at least like further stage businesses that um, are paying hundreds, if not thousands, a month for doing this. So so that's kind of where it came to be, and we started working on it, and I really loved working on the problem, both technically, but also just diving all into the onboarding process. And onboarding, is much more than just welcome tours. And I think a lot of people conflate the two, but it's just a small element that can help. So it's just been really cool to dive um, into that problem. And then, yeah, just to speak to why now I'm solo. So we actually had a lot of we had a lot of stuff in common that we wanted to do, but he also had this other business that he was hiring me for. And so it came down to just we had slightly different visions of like where we wanted to go. And he kept pursuing his company. And I, after starting on this with him, I decided to continue because I was like very interested in the space afterwards. So that's kind of how it all started and how I got into it.
Cool. No, that's really good. Yeah, it's you're absolutely right. User onboarding is a much wider spectrum than just product tools. I can the cogs were turning in terms of the different aspects that you can talk about, and you've got growth in a way like growth hacking can fall into the realm of taking a user from discovery all the way through to success with the product, and that's a form of onboarding as well. So that's a really cool. That's really cool. Yeah, cool. So when you started the project, you were freelancing at the time. By the sounds of it, if you were sort of in negotiations or working with your what would have been a co-founder, is that correct? So you've been freelancing throughout the whole time of building this.
Yeah, I've been freelancing, kind of like to start, I was doing freelancing and then with kind of the goal of going into doing a product business afterwards. Um, I just wanted to, as Rob Walling is like this kind of famous entrepreneur that ran Drip, and he has this thing called the stair step approach. So I've tried to stick to that as much as I can, of
I'm not
just,
I'm not familiar with this.
baby
I,
steps.
I know. Sorry, I know Rob Walling, but I'm not familiar with the stair step approach. Just want to elaborate on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I could quickly touch on that. So it's, I wouldn't say I followed it to a T, but it's kind of just like, don't go all into trying to build a large SaaS company right off the bat. You can start with like a WordPress plugin, or you can start with some uh, like a content business, or and maybe freelancing is a good way to get you there. So it's not just like full-time job, quit your job and go build a SaaS company. That's kind of going to extra hard mode. And so I kind of did like freelancing, contracting work, and still do some now. But then moved on to like trying to do a content, sort of content directory business, and that was a lot of learnings there, and it was a bit probably easier than a SaaS to get up and running, but it ultimately didn't pursue that, and now I'm kind of on a next step, which is the SaaS, and arguably may have done too early. It is really challenging, but I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, can't. But
That's
that's kind of the
that's
stair
really
step approach. Yeah.
that's really good, and I can resonate with that because I've tried projects in the past, and it's always been the big grand vision, and there's so much work that needs to get there. But the project I'm doing at the moment, I really scoped it down as narrow as possible, and I've now seen that frequently release, small amounts, and it makes such a difference, and I can see it just growing from there. So yeah, the stair step approach, I guess. So that's really good to hear that, at least for me, I'm probably doing some of the better strategy now than in the past. um, cool. Um, so you're freelancing at the time, you've started building the project. To build a project, you got to go from zero to something that just gets you to the starting line of having an entity, a project, a product out there, and it's a lot of work. um, and I think a lot of projects probably never make it to that because of time commitments and things like that. So one of the questions I've got is, did you achieve that whilst freelancing, or did you play with your freelancing to free up the time to take take time out of the freelancing, do the product. What was your flow there? Did you do a little bit while freelancing, or stop, do a big bit, and then continue the freelancing?
Yeah. So, like, going back to when I left my job, or actually, it was kind of like a the job left me situation. The company had a big round of layoffs and kind of like had a yeah, it kind of imploded in a way. And so then I was kind of looking like, do I go get a job? So I was still like very heavily leaning towards that. I was interviewing at some places, and then I ended up just after getting to the later stages and a couple offers even, I decided against pursuing that. And because I was pretty interested, I knew I wanted to do my own thing eventually. It's just it never feels like the right time. I'm sure many people can relate to that. And so this kind of felt like the kick in the butt that I needed to just like go and try that, and I was able to actually hire that company that, had the layoffs, or sorry, they hired me um, as a freelancer to do a set number of hours, and so that kinda gave me, like, a head start, and so that was really at the start, it was just trying to do all freelance as much as I could, and I kinda planned on doing that for, I don't know, the year. This was, like, very start of 2020, which, as we know, a couple months in got a little bit hectic. And so I was actually, yeah, I did work for my previous company, and then I found another company and did kind of some contract work for a couple months. But then when the pandemic hit, everyone kind of like really buttoned up and tried to, cut any like extra expenses. So they stopped my contract there. Um, which was okay. I then had all this time and luckily had some savings to float me through. So that was kind of the first point where I started just going all in on my own project. And this was before Hopscotch. Um, this was a project called Beer Finder, and it was actually pandemic related. It was on uh, helping to find craft beer for delivery. All the breweries were shut down in terms of like you couldn't go to them to pick up beer, and all the
Yeah,
bars and stuff were closed. And so made this project where you could go search for craft beer from pulling in from all these brewery websites because otherwise you would have to go to each one by one, and you could see the delivery options and all this, and it was a really, I don't know, fun project. I learned a lot, and that kept me I just kind of kept working on that for, like, 3 or 4 months. I mean, I shipped something really quickly on it. I was between, like, idea to the time it was public was, like, 2 or 3 weeks, um, and and I think that was really important for that first project that it didn't, like, drag on super long, but I was kind of, like, all in on that, and then because there wasn't a lot of freelance work, it was like the opportunities weren't coming my way, and so I just kept going on this, instead of really, like, hunting out new work. It just seemed like in that time with the pandemic at its height and everyone being super tight with their cash, I was better off to just invest in my own, projects. So I did
yeah,
that until, uh, something else came up.
absolutely. Did you the craft beer finder? Did you do that with the view of making money because you had a time pressure to find a source of income because obviously the pandemic? Was that always a focal point for you, or were you using it as a sort of learning opportunity to invest in your own skills, or was the money monetizing it like key driver for you?
It definitely wasn't key, and I didn't have a good monetization strategy at the start. Um, it really came out of just the self need or desire to like I saw someone else made like a big spreadsheet and you could go to every brewery's website like and there we have a couple hundred in Ontario and I have a pretty specific like style of beer that I like. There's one even called like a milkshake IPA, which like to many is probably disgusting, but like and it sometimes they are, but like sometimes they're just really good. And so having to go through all these websites to find your style of beer was kind of frustrating. So it just came out of like, well, I got some time. I'll make this project. I'll try and build this. I put something together using a static site generator called Gatsby, and then I just made like a script that would go and fetch data from all these different sources. Like because they're all running on these e-commerce platforms. And so I would kind of fetch all that, then display it and rebuild it a few times a day. And so it was more just a fun project to start, but then it immediately became clear. Like I launched this primarily on Reddit, on different local subreddits, and it kind of blew up. We had like thousands of people using it within the first week or two. Like I think we had like 30,000 people in the first month or something like that, and I was
Wow.
just kind of blown away. So at that point, I was like, yeah, maybe there's a way to capitalize on this, and so started looking at how I can monetize it then. And my friend was kind of helping me on it as well. And then we ended up, you know, like he joined in as like because he was unemployed because of COVID as well, and he worked in the beer industry, and so he kind of joined in as like employee one, but we didn't have any money coming in, and then we brought in another co-founder. It all kind of blew up because I we just moved too quickly towards trying to make it a business as opposed to letting it be a project. So I do regret that part a bit, but yeah, it was not initially intended to be monetized really, and I wish I had actually held off on that side because it I think that was part of the reason why it became less fun to work on and why I ended up switching away from it.
Right. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. So you're a solo founder now on Hopscotch, and you had essentially co-founder kind of experience with the Beer Finder. How would you compare the two, and which do you prefer? Do you prefer the solo, or do you wish you had someone with you?
There's definitely times where I wish I had a co-founder. Um, yeah, that it's really tough to build on your own, and you're responsible for marketing, you're responsible for product design, everything, accounting, all this stuff. Um, and yeah, you're kind of in your head all the time of just like, trying to play both sides. Whereas with real people, you can get their opinions on stuff and you can share responsibilities and, as opposed to taking everything on. Yeah. So that part I would love to have. But then there's also, I feel like there's a big part of knowing myself, I do work really well in this kind of lone wolf style in that I don't know, I like to move at my own pace. If I take off a few days, I have no responsibility to kind of like I don't feel like I'm behind or if I want to take on a freelance gig for like a month, then I can go and switch gears into that. And, I don't have to just, ask for permission to another co-founder there or let them know. So that part of things, it kind of works really well for me because of the flexibility that I can move at my own pace. That can bite me as well sometimes of, maybe moving too slow or not having to answer to anyone. But for the most part, I think it works well with the type of company that I'm trying to build, which is more like
Yeah,
calm,
I
flexible.
I I empathize with that. I've tried starting a project with co-founders, and yeah, we're still great friends and all of that. But when when some of you have more time than others, and maybe your vision is slightly different, it can, unless you turn it into a business, and I guess you can all go all in at the same time. You can sort of drift as time goes on. So thinking back to your situation, you're a solo founder. You can make those decisions where to invest more time heavily. I would imagine that would be harder if you're trying to coordinate that with another co-founder who's also got projects going on or is employed, that you get that kind of equal input to go all in, and kind of synchronizing that could be quite a challenge. So certainly as a solo founder, I can see where that decision's entirely yours. You don't have to um, try and coordinate it with someone else, which is quite good in a way. Um, One thing that you've spoken about in relation to being a solo founder is you can't do everything all at once, and um, you want to do that. Was it the stair step approach? So you don't want to take on too much. And one of the things that I've picked up on that you've said previously is um, it's okay to go slower and do it at your pace. And I think there's this pressure. You've got to get the, launch early. Get the If you're not embarrassed by what you launch, you've launched too late, and get to monetization and all of that. I think there's a lot of pressure on solo founders to take that on. But when you give yourself permission to go slower, how do you keep focus on what's like most important to get the biggest return for that time you put in? How would you say you handled that with Hopscotch?
Uh, man, it's so hard. It's really like just maybe yesterday or the day before. Like the way I kind of work is just like I use Notion. It works really well as a note taker for me to be able to like have everything everywhere. Like I can just brain dump into this, one hopscotch note that I have, and it does have a Kanban style board in it, but then it also has so it has that at the bottom with my like tasks and some things like that. But then really like most of what I'm doing, I'm just like capturing up at the top of that in like, writing quick notes down and stuff. And so it's kind of like helping me to well, yeah, I capture things, especially if I'm like on a freelance project and I don't have time to go and like fully think things through. I just like jump over to my Notion and like write something in there and then come back to it. But then after like a couple weeks, it's just like notes, 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 uh and then I have to like go sort through all this again. So it can be a bit of a disaster. If you saw my workflow, it's like that. And then I kind of look at those bullet points and then I just kind of sort them like what feels like the most important thing. I have at the top written what is the most important thing. And but the problem with that is, like, I don't always stick to it. Like, sometimes that even floats down further down the page, and then I, like, have to, like, go, like, redo all that. Like, I gotta say, like, I don't have the best, like, organization for that. But when I do sit down, yeah, sometimes I get kinda decision paralysis on, uh at some points, it's very clear. I need to go and just build this product part, or I need to like focus on, I don't know, like making a website update or just finding customers and those things. And so, I do try to put like themes or goals and what the most important thing is to work on. But in terms of like how well I stick to it, I think there's like sometimes where it's like very clear and other times where it's almost like I should just do anything because just sitting and trying to organize and decide is not helpful. So I really should just go and tackle some small things until it becomes very clear what the next thing is.
I I totally understand that. For myself, I've got the challenge of building the next feature. I'm pretty clear as what feature I want to build, but my marketing strategy is helping others succeed in their note taking on the YouTube channel, and that requires creating content. So I've got this. If I put too much focus on the content, I slow down on the product development, and if I do the product development,
Mhm.
I slow down on the content, and the two do have kind of a symbiotic relationship because those who enjoy the content discover the product, join the mailing list waiting, and can try out the product. And it's really valuable because that's going to be the key marketing strategy that doesn't involve big pockets or things that are out my comfort zone. So keeping that top focus is really critical. I need to do it better for the product. I've done it okay by focusing on answering some key questions of what the product needs to do rather than trying to just add feature to compete. I want to differentiate it. And I feel I've achieved that at a surface level and then gradually get deeper and deeper into it. But it is hard. And I guess the biggest challenge is when you go down some kind of rabbit hole, like a piece of development that just sprawls into something that's way more complicated. That's something that I experience more often than I would like to admit, where it should be one feature and it involves like five new pieces of technology because it just is more complicated. Have you had those situations and have you pulled yourself back and said, actually, that's not for right now. Let's focus on something smaller that gets us a better win? Have you had any of that experience so far?
Yeah, a huge part of what I've been trying to juggle or just balance is because I have competitors who have been in the market for a couple years. Catching up is really difficult as a solo founder and still getting out to market. And so I've been trying to play this game of like, do I go all in on building, like just building for months, or can I make like a half version of that? And I feel like I've come to a pretty good. I like it took me a long time of thinking through some of that too. Like and a lot of it came. I didn't just go decide to do this. I was having these customer calls where I would demo the product, and they would say, "Oh, but can it do this?" I'd say, "No, not yet, but I, you know, gonna work on that." And can it do that? Yes, we do that. No, we don't. And so through having, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 chats with different like potential customers. You show them what you have, and then they have been telling me what they need. And so that kind of helped me to figure out what those most important parts are. And then I can make like these smaller steps to getting there. And I would try to break those into smaller projects. So I can give like a specific example there um, for hopscotch. So there like you're building these tours or these things that are going to live inside your application, and so a lot of people want the ability to be able to build that kind of overlaid on their application itself, as opposed to building it in my editor, um, and then kind of like having to go preview it each time. And so that was like a pretty big shift from how I started. It was I just wanted to get something out there, put a form in, and did that. And it was okay. And I ended up, yeah, just people without coding knowledge really wanted the ability to be able to do this without bugging their product teams, like their developer teams, to go like add CSS selectors or figure out the CSS side. Like, I think that's actually one of the bigger selling propositions of a tool like Hopscotch. And I'm realizing that from customers telling me that they don't want to have to bug their developers each time that they want to make a tweak to this or to go at it. And so I knew I had to do that. And this was something that was going to be like a fairly big chunk of work. I ended up kind of being able to still have like you can build the tour in my dashboard, but then you can go and like click attach, and it's gonna go like to attach to an element within their app. It's gonna just launch their website with kind of like a query parameter in the URL, and then it will do this overlay to attach like kind of you can pick your feature, kind of like Chrome Inspector, where you see which elements,
Yeah,
and then it will take you back over to my dashboard. And so it's kind of like this half, like it felt like awkward, but it's like a step towards it. And it took me, I don't know, like I figured out how to build that in a roughest sense within, I don't know, a day or two. But I thought about it a long time before. Um, but yeah, I was able to ship it much quicker, and it's still there. And some people actually prefer it than doing everything within their own app. So I've heard that they
that's
actually quite like visualizing it like this. So that's one example. Yeah.
cool. That's really good. I find you've touched on something there. You had to think a lot about it, but the solution wasn't as big as maybe you first thought. And one thing that I like to do is think of an idea and then try and forget the idea, forget the solution. for a period of time and just let your subconscious percolate on the idea. And some of the best ideas I've had in my career have happened when I've been on walks or just out and about, where I'm seeing the same problem but from a different mindset, a different perspective, and quite often that can reveal a much simpler solution. So going back to the question, I guess it's, if you're finding that you are sort of in the weeds and it's becoming bigger and more complicated and you just want to get this feature done, but it's just the scope of it is just growing and growing, take a break, come back, think of it in a different way, and then hopefully in your case, you'll realize a nice simpler way to deliver it without having to do everything that is your initial kind of assessment of this feature. As a Yeah, as a builder, as a maker, you sort of see, it's very easy to see what the there's a phrase, the Rolls Royce version of it, the really nice version of it is, and you just need the simple one out there initially, and you've got to pull yourself out. You've got to cut until you get, really, you solve the customer problem in the simplest way, and then you can build on it. And I think that's, yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and it's tough to balance that because some of this yeah, some of this could be argued that, like, going back and forth, like, demoing to customers and they tell you they need more, and then going again, build that, and then another customer tells you they need something else, like, that back and forth, if it's stuff that you kind of already know that should be in there, like, there's some things that you're just like, "Yeah, we need to build that." Like, "We definitely need to go ahead with this. It's gonna be a big chunk of work, but, like, it's kinda table stakes to be in this game." And so, when is it, I guess it's always like questioning that, is it table stakes? And then hearing it from customers, that's been helpful for me. But it does slow, again, I'm moving slower, maybe than if I had just gone all in and build everything at once and just like, you know, go into a code cave for months at a time and then come out and like, here it is. But there's a very high chance that I would have maybe built the wrong thing in that, and I still might be
Yeah.
building the wrong thing. Like, I'm not, like, successful yet with this, so it's just a balance. Trying to figure that out is a bit of an art that I am learning each day still.
Yeah, I've been there. That I've started many a projects and I've built the wrong thing or underestimated how much I could build. So bringing this back to someone who's in, say, a full-time job, or they're a freelance and they want to invest more time in, they want to get everything ready to create the product that they want to create, which I think is where we're leaning towards. The question I have here is, sometimes you might want to keep all your ideas kind of closed off. You have this vision of a product, you want to build it, and then you want to launch it to the world. And if you build it, they will come. Uh, do you think prior to trying to build it and go all in, it's actually worthwhile talking to as many people as you can about it? Because one thing that you've said today is, it's that feedback that you got from other people that has sort of helped navigate what's of importance, which way you should be thinking. Do you feel that would be a good approach before going all in, making sure that you've got that feedback from others?
Yeah, I mean, I should have prefaced at the very start, my advice is like, so biased towards my own experience. And hopefully that comes like, hopefully people can just understand that, you should always like think about what's best for you. Like, I, but that said too, I would have not expected myself to be the person who enjoys like getting feedback and talking to customers so often. I didn't come from like a sales background, and this really is sales, doing like customer development. Um, Reading a book called The Mom Test really helped me that, with that approach, and we can get a bit more into that in a bit too, but I would recommend it to anyone who's thinking of this approach, like asking the right questions. Um, and once you know that you're asking the right questions, because you could talk and ask the wrong questions all day and then kind of set yourself up for failure that way. But yeah, if for me, it's been super helpful to be speaking with people. I started first with more of what there's another approach called the sales safari from Amy Hoy. And it's basically like you go try and look for people talking about the problems, and so you go look in like communities and like Slack groups or on Reddit, like what people are talking about, Hacker News, how they're talking about the problem or the solutions in the space, and like is there room there? And so I did quite a bit of that to chat with some founders and some product people before I went into Hopscotch to see like, um, is this something that people are having a problem with? And it's not going to give you 100%. People say one thing and then do another thing often. I've done it myself, saying I would use a product and then I don't. Um, so it can give you false signals doing this as opposed to just like trusting your gut. But I don't know. I've really enjoyed it. Again, I'm not growing super quickly, rocket ship growth, but I feel like what is being built with this iteration and talking to people, especially up front, like talking to people up front is a great way to do it. And I think what you're doing too with like, building content, like I really think that like if you could build content in the space first and then build up a need through that, before you start any product, it's a great way to do it because distribution at the end of the day is probably the problem that most SaaS companies are going to have. It's not, um, can the product be good? It's like, can I reach an audience that has the problem? And if you have that built in from the start, you're kind of set. You can just tweak your solution from there.
I completely agree with that. On my own experience, my strategy has been, yeah, create YouTube videos around the subject that helps the person who will be my target customer, and they get value from the videos whether they like the product or not. That's so there's a win there. And if seeing that translate to people joining the mailing list, I mean, to give you some figures, I've just recently gone over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and over 50% of those people who subscribe, I don't know if it's the same people, but I can go by the numbers, join the mailing list specifically for the waitlist for the app. So I've got over
Mm.
500 people on that wait list, and I'm like, I'm kind of just building this thing really for myself initially. Then hopefully others will join that journey, and that's really for me. That's really rewarding because it's a signal that actually I am doing something that is of interest to others. I'm getting that feedback that I'm in the right space. I'm sort of talking about it from the right frame of mind, and as you said, distribution I think is one of the most undervalued things about building anything is how do you get the message out. It's really hard, and it's purely a like unless you've got deep pockets or people of influence, you've got to build up momentum with that flywheel effect. So for me it's YouTube. If other options are like blogging and things like that, where you create that content, but it does take months for it to start churning in that way, to give you that feedback loop, and the numbers as well coming in. So my sort of advice, again talking from my own experiences, um, would be if you've got an idea but you're working full time, start talking to your target audience and help them. And the bit that's been really fascinating for me is that I've helped them with what will technically be competing products. I've helped them succeed on that. But in doing that, I build the trust and authenticity where I now control sort of the narrative and can introduce them my product as it starts coming into being and get that distribution. As I think talking about a competing product or helping someone with a competing product is a uh, feels like a no-go when it comes to business. That um, you'll help your competitor, you're leaving money on the table or you're giving money to your competitor. I because I've got nothing to lose, I take a different approach and I say, I will help. I've got plans for videos on Notion and using note taking methods around Notion and all the apps. Why? Because A, I want to help people in whatever software they're using. And B, I want YouTube to pick up those videos and put my videos in front of the audience. People will be looking for it otherwise. Um, so yeah, I doing that before you're ready to go all in for me, I think is a good strategy because you feel like you're. I feel the difference. I can feel the momentum compared to doing things that aren't launched. Nobody knows what it is. You have to every time you talk about it, you're pitching what it is over and over, and that could be quite hard. So it's a different approach, but I'll at some point I'll know whether it works or not because
And
I'm not there yet to prove it.
it's like it's kind of different too, but like um a lot of people maybe start in like contracting in that space or freelancing in that space too, just solving the problem. And so, if I didn't do that, but if I had, I would have been solving the problem using tools that exist already. So using other, it kind of what you're saying, like using what would become competitors' products, so that I know, the problem space better before I go build, and that gives me a better idea of what's wrong, like what's lacking in these other options, and what is good about them, like what do people like, what do people dislike about it, and kind of so you can do it in like a freelancing approach. You can also do it in a content approach. And like you said, there's people who are searching for Notion, and you can show them the value there. And then when you come out with more videos on what you're building, they will hopefully, yeah, have that trust built up. Um, yeah, like
Absolutely.
I, yeah,
So I was going to say I do cheat in my videos. I actually use my own product to outline the topic of the video before switching to the competing app. So I'm
mm,
subtly exposing my video through the whole thing. Only one person has called me out in the comments, and funny enough, other viewers came to my defense, which is really nice. So
yeah, like if you
yeah,
look at Ahrefs, the SEO company, or Moz, the way that like, I really loved how they came with their content and, like, basically released these really high quality courses for free on how to do SEO, and they're using their tools, which is like but, like, the strategies do apply to other tools, and so it's super fair to do that. You're still, like, putting so much value into the world. When I think about, I don't know, just, like, how much content is being created, there's kind of like fluffy content, just like trying to meet the SEO demands. And then there's content that really helps people like just be just solve the problem that they're trying to solve. I think if you focus, uh, this is a huge part of like what I've learned in the onboarding space as well, is like don't focus on the solution, focus on solving the problem and delivering value. And so you can do that with content. You don't have to do that necessarily with your product, but you can then merge the two later on.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I stand by that strategy thoroughly. I think it's in a digital age where small entrepreneurs can make a huge impact. Content, building the trust and authority, it's really hard to do as a company, as an individual. You've got a lot of value to give, and I think that's really like the opportunities here. If you have the strategies and put the time in and deliver on it, just help other people with their goal, with solving their problem, and it just so happens that you might build a product that makes that easier for them. It's a beautiful kind of way of launching, I think. Um,
Mhm.
okay, so you've gone through this sort of transition where you used to work full time, you then started freelancing and contracting. That may not have been your choice, but you took the opportunity as it came to you. The pandemic, as I like to think of it, as it's a snow globe that's been shaken, and you just don't know where anything was going to land. But you should always look at opportunities through there. You've invested that into building things, which I think is really, really great. Um, doing that transition, is there anything that sort of sticks out that you wish that you knew beforehand, that you wish you'd put more time in when you had the time before moving over and sort of going all in on your product?
Um, I just wish that, yeah, earlier, like that I had started earlier planning for it, mostly from a financial standpoint. It was, I was not always a software developer. I actually started off in music marketing, which um, anything in the music industry, you're not making a ton of dough, and so I actually had like quite a bit of debt, not like massive amounts, but I had debt to take care of, and then when I got my software job, like I kind of like started being able to pay that off, but I also was kind of living more lavishly at the start, and so uh, just like growing into that income, and and then it took me a while to really wake up and be like, just like pay down this debt and like start building some some savings, having an emergency fund for a set number of months or like a specific number of months, and then growing that number over time to have more safety. I think that's like one of the most crucial things for being able to set yourself up for success in so many ways. If you want to go off and build product like of your own, or you want to go freelancing, or you like what happened to me, lost your job because of this was like before the pandemic, like but like a big round of layoffs, like some of my coworkers were kind of had to go take the first opportunity that would come to them, and I had an emergency fund of cash set aside, that I just felt like, okay, I can take my time with interviews and still like find the job that's going to work best for me. Make sure it's going to be like, still a step up in salary, as opposed to like just having to rush to something else. And like that took time to build up over the couple years previous. So I can't go, I don't have regrets, but I wish I had started sooner thinking about that, because it just, I don't know, it like changes how you have to react to things. I mean, there's kind of an expression of like F you money when you, and that's kind of more like you have a ton of cash, but like just being able to make decisions without urgency, because you have saved some, 6 months or 3 months of money there to cover your expenses, just takes so much stress off your shoulders. It's not easy for everyone to do it, but I do think like you can make steps towards this. You know, when I specifically was uh, spending too much and grew into that income, I got rid of my car. I moved in. I had a one bedroom apartment before. I moved in with four other roommates, and I stopped eating out. I only cooked at home, like made, not like I kind of just like went all in on paying down debts and then growing some finances. And that's what set me up to be able to go and transition into this without feeling like a huge sense of urgency. And same with when the pandemic hit, like having that reserve there again, so that I couldn't, or so that I could go work on my own projects for a couple of months. And if freelancing came back, then that was going to be great. But I wasn't going to have to go urgently find a job again at that point. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
end up going back because they don't prepare enough for that.
Yeah, I remember I changed jobs. I used to work for IBM as a graduate for 6 years. Changed jobs to Ericsson, and in my first like week there, I really wasn't happy because the it turns out I loved the job, but I thought actually I want to go contracting. So I literally was working out how much money I needed to save to build up that runway so that I could go contracting. Um, and fortunately, other circumstances came my way, and I was able to do that with some client work. But I guess it's having that mindset of planning what the next 2 years, where you want to be in 2 years' time, and really being honest that if you do want to build a product and you do want to, I like to refer to it as buying back time. If you want to take time out of work and buy back time, whether that's depending on your employer, it may be reducing to part time, it may be a sabbatical, um, it may be even changing jobs, planning when you might want to change jobs, but taking a gap to build something. And then if you make it work, maybe that's what you want to do more of, or you've always got that next thing. Or if you want to go freelancing, so you go from working for someone else to working for yourself, where you are in more control of your schedule, and saying yes to some jobs and no to other jobs. I totally agree. Like having that kind of financial mindset of what it's really going to be like, and maybe making some decisions that don't increase your expenditure, and building up that reserve. I think it's hard, and it's hard when cost of living is going up, but at least thinking about it and really understanding what that experience would be like. And in your case, where change was forced upon you, when if you lose your work, if they do a redundancy or anything like that, then um, you want to be prepared to use it as an opportunity, I think, rather than as a situation that you have to panic from. So I think bringing
Mm.
this back to the theme, you want the mindset to plan to go all in way sooner than, like, it's not tomorrow. Say, right, I'm ready, because today will be you know the habits that you've had, and if you weren't ready 3 weeks ago and you've got the same habits and same lifestyle, it's going to be the same, and you still won't be ready. So I think that's really, really valuable. And then I
Yeah,
just want to
if you
finish
say
up.
like,
Oh,
oh yeah,
sorry, you go.
just gonna say like if I don't know to just go all in sounds like just one day you're doing something and then the next day you're doing something completely different, but like it's a journey of many years. And even going back further, like I had to go learn from switching to marketing to learning software development on my own. I didn't have the finances to go to school for that, so that was a lot of like time on evenings and weekends to go make that transition. So like yeah, it's like looking back, the journey to get to where I am now has been like 8 or 9 years of like going to to get here. So it's so easy to say, oh, like they jumped all into freelancing and now they're having success with and they're able to float themselves. But you kind of have to, like you said, think long term, 2 years, 5 years from now, what do you want to be doing? And you're gonna probably have to make some sacrifices to make that happen and really like just like go for it, and like with patience, but like take it into your own hands and really fight for it and try to make it work, and it will
Yeah,
hopefully pay off.
yeah. You've just sparked a thought. Um, if let's say you're working full time and you've got this aspiration to become a freelancer or run your own business or do something, one thing that's really quite good is start thinking about the skills you need to run that business, to do those things. And one thing you touched on is like talking to other people and customers, and maybe a bit of the sales, or even it could be content creation. And I think what might be quite useful is seeing whether there's any opportunities to practice those skills in the job you're doing. So if you're a developer, maybe there's an opportunity to do some developer advocacy, where you start talking to people outside the company and build that confidence and the skills, which I think in a way is good to help you with that transition. So it's not overwhelming. It's when you get there, you're like talking to potential customers. Well, I've done that a million times before in my last job. So I think there's an element of, if you're not ready today, you can still do something to get those skills. And again, we talk about the financial cushion. I think there's definitely some prep work that you could be thinking about. So yeah, I just want to finish up. Uh, I can't remember what my last question was. Now I completely derailed myself. Um, oh, that was it. So as a freelancer, you have times where there's lots of work and times where there may be not so much work. and coordinating that can be quite difficult. And depending on word of mouth, and you might be completely busy all the time, and it's really hard to say no. So you've got this product, you want to carve some time out to build and develop the product. You've got the freelance side, which is great for building more of that runway to support yourself while you do it. But when it comes to clients coming in, and it's how easy is it to say no to work where they say, "Are you available?" But you're saying, "Actually, I'm booked up at the moment," because what you're really doing is working on your own product. I know a good friend of mine. He's a freelancer. He struggles to say no to projects because he's got his own work he wants to do, but he ends up getting a last minute project, and any time he'd planned to do that will be taken with paying work. It's a mindset thing to be able to say no, be comfortable with leaving that money, on the table. How how have you experienced that, and have you managed to figure it out?
I would say that I don't have it totally figured out in saying no because yeah, you don't know when work is coming or not, and so I'll usually have the chat and like see what the opportunity is going to be like, and um, at the start of each year, I've tried to say like, okay, well, like if I can make this much, that will like cover my expenses, and you know, so I'm not going to be in a position where I'm falling behind financially. So at least I'm able to stay even. So I'll try to like at least get that much work in my pipeline. Um, and I've been successful with that so far to that like at that time of year I have been, hired for for maybe a month or two of contract work. And so beyond that, yeah, I try to make sure that I'm not just taking on these like small little bits and pieces of projects that are they all take cap- mental capacity to like plan and communicate and execute on. And so I try to keep my plate relatively empty or not a ton on it, especially like diverse options. I try to keep it like focused with like one client at a time, maybe two. Um, but that is just how I work best. And then I kind of set like a minimum amount for how much, like just I usually will say that up front to a potential client so that they know like it's going to be a minimum amount so that I am going to, probably cover a month or two expenses from this job at least and maybe go beyond that. I don't want to just, waste everyone's like we don't want to waste each other's time on that. So I think doing that will help. But then there's also kind of just yeah, so let's say you get to that amount for the year and you do it early on, you could continue working on your own stuff for the rest of the year. But like, if a good opportunity comes up, I'll definitely weigh it still and say like, is the time invested on this gonna, extend my runway this much, or does it sound like a fun project where I'll get to learn a lot, or is it a combination of those two? And I'll kind of take on work with that. Like, usually, yeah, I want to enjoy what I'm working on, even if it's client work. I don't want to have to go, I don't know, learn a completely new language or framework. Sometimes I like to go and just, do like my expert JavaScript node stack for someone and, be like really just on point with it. And so I'll take on work that I like, or maybe it's I am learning a new framework or something in the process, like working more with like building a GraphQL API, and that sounds pretty cool. So I'll sign up for that. And a lot of those projects, I'll take stuff back to my own work after. So it can be helpful to like step away from hopscotch for a bit and then come back with fresh eyes and fresh ideas. Um, and so at that point, it kind of becomes like a not a very clear framework, but like, will I enjoy this and how impactful will it be on like stretching out the runway? And then I'll make a decision from that.
Yeah, that makes that makes sense. Do you think there'll ever be a point where Hopscotch will make enough money that you can just say no to freelancing completely? Or is there always a desire to keep the toe in the water and enjoy a bit of freelancing?
I guess like I probably would rather be working fully on product um and then buy back that time for more personal things, hobbies
Yeah,
and friends and family and that stuff.
yeah,
Eventually, yeah, I would probably like to phase out the freelancing. I do, yeah, I do make sure to take on projects that I like, but at the same time, it's still a big time commitment. And usually, towards the end of an engagement, I'm like ready to get back to it. So, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. There is plenty of work to do for Hopscotch, and so it's just not financially supporting me yet. And hopefully it will one day. So yeah, I would definitely prefer to get it to that point. And so, you know, uh I may focus harder on reaching that goal. But yeah, I'm not going to count anything out. I'll say that the one nice thing is like I've had lower pressure because of it, because of being able to have both. I can, make better decisions and move a bit slower. And maybe from the outside, it looks like, oh, why is this guy moving so slow with this product? Like he's still in early access. It's been 6 months, that you get that kind of pressure or you feel it from like the Twitter sphere and stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, it's like, well, I'm still, again, looking at how, like, the big picture of things, I'm doing well enough with, like, freelancing. I still don't have to work, like, all year on that. I can work, like, half the year on that and the other half on Hopscotch and still be doing better than I was in my full-time job. So I'm still ahead in that world, and
Absolutely.
so I quite like it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I find like I've always done side projects. They've always helped me advance my technical skills, but also just my mental kind of enjoyment of tech because it's purely creative. You've got the autonomy with it. You've got the ownership of it, and I think that's really empowering. And I've had stressful times in my career, but the things I've done on the side have always been sort of that escape. And my project Flotelic at the moment is definitely that for me at the moment, where I love it. I love the content creation. I want to use my own product more and more, which is a really nice place to be in. And when it's quiet and I want to de-stress, just pottering around in the garden of my own project is really quite nice. So uh,
I'm a huge
I
fan
get
of
that.
building a business, like a lifestyle business has with different implications or whatever. But like I actually really like that term because I want to build a business that will just improve my life and make it so I can go spend time doing what I like. And, if I want to go coding into a deep code cave for a week at a time, then I can do that. Or if I need to advance, like I don't know, get more customers into the pipeline, switch gears, or like learning how to work with video and maybe go into some video content creation, like just kind of have fun exploring. I'm doing so much of this, I'm doing for learning, and the fact that you can learn so much as an entrepreneur and hopefully make it a viable like lifestyle business along the way, I am really
Absolutely,
excited about that.
absolutely. I'm trying to coin the phrase. We've got full stack developer. I'm trying to coin the phrase full SaaS developer, which includes the marketing, the content marketing, the business, as well as building the product. And I think that quite nicely articulates that level of skills you may want as a solo founder, I guess. So so yeah, let's wrap it up here. Thank you very much, Cam, for your time. Really appreciate it. I've been enjoying this conversation thoroughly, hearing your experiences. A lot of it resonates with some of my experiences, and we're all here doing this. We're trying to build our own things. We're trying to learn as we go, and I think these conversations they help us kind of expand our perspective and keep us motivated. So I really appreciate your time today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy to chat and just reflect on a lot of this, and I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.